Okay, my name is Alyssa Engel.
And I'm Michaela Beckley, and our topic is addiction and the brain.
So what is addiction? It is a biopsychosocial disorder characterized by repeated use of drugs or repeated engagement in behavior such as gambling, despite harm to self or others. There are two different factors that contribute to addiction. The first is genetic factors, which contributes to about 50% of all addiction cases, including but not limited to stimulants, opioids, cannabinoids, alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine. The genetic factors play a role in addiction in the way of our reward response and the path in which our brain processes stimuli. The other side of addiction is environmental factors, which contributes to the other 50% of all addiction cases. This ranges from drug exposure to chemical imbalances and situational stressors that come with life.
The two-factor model for addiction suggests that addictive substances are stimulants of neural pathways as well as pain suppressants. The neural pathways provide a biological basis for the craving as users want to avoid the withdrawal symptoms. Pain can be suppressed by some of those same addictive substances, which adds to the addiction as no one wants to feel pain. Those withdrawal symptoms work as a negative reinforcement as they take away pain and the stimulated neural pathways. Pain suppression is a positive reinforcement because it's giving the user less pain.
There is changing genetic responses in the brain that has to do with addiction. Gene expression is altered in addiction cases. Transcription factors, which are proteins that bind and can turn on or off expression of specific genes, takes place. A good example of this is CAMP, which is the response element protein, CREB. Drug abuse has been shown to activate CREB in a negative feedback loop. It works as a type of reward system, developing tolerance for drugs. This also increases dependence as individuals can experience withdrawal symptoms.
It is thought that negative and positive reinforcement can occur in different places in the brain. Negative and positive reinforcement is believed to occur in the medial forebrain, but positive reinforcement is remembered for longer. It's also believed that dopamine systems involved in stimulation reinforcement are activated transsynaptically or spontaneously rather than being depolarized like normal. Amphetamine and cocaine both have an effect on the brain that causes dopamine to sit in the synapse longer rather than being reuptaken by the cell. Amphetamines cause dopamine release into the synapse, and both amphetamines and cocaine inhibit the reuptake mechanism.
Welcome to 2-Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss the reward system. The reward system refers to a group of structures that are activated whenever we experience something rewarding, like using an addictive drug. When exposed to a rewarding stimulus, the brain responds by increasing release of the neurotransmitter dopamine. Thus, structures that are considered part of the reward system are found along the major dopamine pathways in the brain. The pathway most often associated with reward is the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, which starts in an area of the brainstem called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA. The VTA is one of the principal dopamine-producing areas in the brain, and the mesolimbic dopamine pathway connects it with the nucleus accumbens, a nucleus found in a part of the brain that is strongly associated with motivation and reward, called the ventral striatum. When we use an addictive drug or experience something rewarding, dopamine neurons in the VTA are activated. These neurons project to the nucleus accumbens via the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, and their activation causes dopamine levels in the nucleus accumbens to rise. Another major dopamine pathway, the mesocortical pathway, also originates in the VTA but travels to the cerebral cortex, specifically to the frontal lobes. It is also activated during rewarding experiences and is considered part of the reward system. Because dopamine is released whenever we use an addictive drug, researchers initially thought dopamine must be the neurotransmitter that causes pleasure. More recent research, however, suggests that dopamine activity doesn't correlate exactly with pleasure. For example, dopamine neurons are activated before a reward is actually received, and thus before the pleasure is experienced. For this and other reasons, it is now thought that dopamine has roles other than causing pleasure, such as assigning importance to environmental stimuli associated with rewards and increasing reward seeking. Whatever the precise role of dopamine in reward is, the mesolimbic dopamine pathway is consistently activated during rewarding experiences, leading it to be considered the main structure of the reward system. Regardless, the actual network of brain structures involved in mediating reward is much larger and more complex than just this dopamine pathway, involving many other brain regions and neurotransmitters.
And these are our works cited.